Welcome to Courageous Creative Conquerors. I'm your host, Jean Boyce Dart, Expressive Arts Psychotherapist, credentialed teacher, and coach. It's my belief that we are all courageously creative and destined to navigate our way through life, learning how to feel, reveal, and heal. And we do this safely and effectively through the expressive arts. Hi everyone, Jean Boyce Dart here with Courageous Creative Conquerors, and my special guest is Kate Hawks, and she is a theater and drama advocate and education advocate, and I'm just so excited to have you here, Kate.
Well, thank you, Jean. I'm excited to be here. Pretty nice.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about. You have a lot of things after your name that I didn't mention, and I'd love for you to kind of just give a quick description of what you do, what you love, what your passion is.
Okay, so I theater arts. So whether that is as a theater practitioner, as a writer, director, actor, producer, also teaching theater, whether it's acting, also coaching people with writing plays. So there's a whole theater world. And then the other part of that is arts and healthcare. So how do we utilize the arts in the healthcare world, whether it's mental health or whether it's in the venues themselves, like how hospitals can use art in their space. And then I also have a whole horse world. So I have horses, and I've done a lot of using sort of, people call it equine therapy.
Yes.
I just say people hang with a horse and see what happens. I don't like the word therapy. So I do a lot with my horses for me and with other people. And I'm also a trail runner. I run, and I sometimes sleep.
Well, I love the whole thing about dramatic arts, expressive arts, of course. I'm an expressive arts therapist, teacher, coach. I love all that. But the dramatic piece of it, the theater piece of it, I've always loved that. And I want to know, did you have any experiences as a child? How did you get hooked into all that? Why do you love acting, producing, writing, script writing, all those things? What happened in your childhood?
Well, I think our family were inveterate storytellers. Like we, as a family, so I would remember I grew up on a ranch, and everyone would be out doing their stuff. And at the end of the day, there was this thing, even when we were very small, we'd all sit around the table, and everyone would say, "What did you do today?" And we were expected to be able to tell a story about what we did. I think we learned very early that telling stories, communicating what we did. And my family were good listeners. And my dad used to read poetry at the table, which was fun. He had
Yeah.
one poem that always made him cry. We'd say, "Dad, read the story of Mongrel Grey," because we knew he'd cry. And then my grandmother, when she had all the grandkids to stay, she had a big dress up box, and she would encourage us to take poetry, Christopher Robin, A.A. Milne, all those poems, and we would act them out. So we would learn the lines, she'd assign the parts, we'd put on costumes. So I guess it was just always something we did. And then it carried into high school and then into university. Um, yeah, so it's just always been in my world. And I think, how did that translate to health? I worked for a theater company, Artist Repertory Theater in Oregon, and I was the outreach person. I connected plays to the community, and we were doing a play called Wit, which was about cancer, a woman who died of cancer. And I reached out to real people who really did have cancer. I mean, the writer hadn't had that experience. So I did a whole project with people with cancer, and it was a storytelling project. It was a 4 month write your story, professional actors perform it, audiences pay money to come and see a show. And it was so profoundly healing for everybody that I then founded a company which did that. So, and then when I left Oregon, went to Arizona, I just kept doing it in various forms.
And so uplifting, up leveling when they do something like that, and they have created it, and then they watch it come to fruition. I just love that, and I really connected with what you said about your family. My family too. Storytelling was so important with reading stories just from the get-go, and then acting things out. My mother had a box of all different kinds of costumes and things, that old clothes and things for us to play with and put on. And we were always, even when we were just doing some games, we would act it out very expressively with our faces. And we saw her share things and emote and express. And that just showed me how to do that. And then how to bring that healing aspect in of encouraging my clients and students to, well, let's just put a little more feeling into how would you act that out with your body? How would you feel that? And that's so healing, don't you think? Tell us a little more about your work with, I think you work with teenagers, with encouraging them to work through some of their overwhelmed stress through dramatic.
It well, I taught at a liberal arts college, so I was teaching theater to college students, and I did a whole program with that at that college of students who had experienced sexual assault on campus. I don't know if I've specifically worked with teenagers in that area. It's mostly the last 10 years. What I've been working with mostly is veterans, people who've been in the military, really deserve and require our attention, our respect, and everything we can do to help whatever happens after that
Yes.
experience. So that's sort of been a big passion for me. And then as far I used to work with little bitty kids, but you know what I'm gonna say, I'm older now, don't quite have the patience.
Isn't it amazing? Our granddaughter is 5, and we watched her regularly throughout the day while mommy, daddy were busy working. And just immediately after, I don't know, 6 months, just very, very young, expressing so much through musical expression and movement when able to finally stand up and move around and dance and express. And it's just a natural way, and we see that in young children, so expressive, and then they stuff it. They learn, they get told, you're so dramatic, you just take it down a notch, or something. They get told something, you know, don't get so upset, don't just, but what are we doing to our children? And what is your message to parents out there, how we can help them?
Well, my work when I do I have something called performing wellness, and I also have personal magic. That's sort of what I wrote about mostly in our book, and I have a whole book called Personal Magic, which is somewhere in the universe. But when I do the performing wellness, I begin with the wild child. I say to people, we were all a child once. Um, for at least part of our childhood, hopefully we had a good experience. I'm very aware that sometimes I'm working with people who had really horrible childhoods, so I don't assume everybody had a great childhood. But what I talk about is there's a wild child within us all. And
Mhm.
that is the part of us that before we were told, this is the part of us that points, that asks questions, that puts things in our mouths, that stares, that comments, that runs away, that screams and yells, that has a tantrum. And I say, when we do the writing with me, I say, that's the part of you I want to do the writing. I don't want the organized headspace person trying to no, I want your wild child to tell the story that we're telling. And we can clean it up afterwards, but begin with the wild child. Um, so I think sometimes it's if as an adult you are uncomfortable with freedom of expression, however that is, hard for us to feel comfortable when our children are freely expressing themselves.
Yes,
And there is that
so
line,
true.
there's that balance between what is socially acceptable, um, what is, what they do have to learn some social manners, but also I'm one who will always push the social boundary.
And certainly it's okay at home,
Yeah.
not maybe not in the restaurant to be screaming and running around or standing on the table. But if we have feelings, the parents can make it okay. I do that with my clients and with my grandchild. Hey, let's get that energy out. Let's stomp around. Let's move around, because she arrived in a mood a few days ago and she was having an overnight with us, and she was just upset about everything. No, grandma, everything was wrong. You're not listening. I don't like that. Everything was wrong. She had a tough day, and so we have to find a way. Let's stamp it out. Let's put some music on. Let's move. Let's do this. Let's run around outside. So there's safe ways to do that, and the expressive arts are certainly well documented as a safe way to get out your feelings. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's stop a minute here and look at this sign behind me, Courageous Creative Conquerors. What does that mean to you? And how have you been courageously creative throughout your life?
That's an interesting question. I am, and if you get the if when you get the book, if you read my chapter, I kind of talk about the fact that and like I said to Eugene when you first came to me about the book, I don't have any big, huge, massive, dramatic aha moment, but writing the book helped me realize I had a series of what I call small earthquakes, and they added up. And it was interesting to write the book because I started to look at those, which I hadn't before. Um, so I think in terms of using creativity, writing, I've always been one who writes poetry, writes a journal to myself. Um, and because I moved to America from Australia, I used to write long emails home about what I was doing. So I think that just the process of writing in any of those forms was helpful. So it sort of has worked for me personally and also in my work.
Just all of us go through normal life challenges. Someone dies in our family, we're grieving. Um, how do we handle that? How do we handle the pain of losing a job, injuring ourselves and not being able to walk and take care of ourselves and needing help? Different things happen throughout our lives, just normal life.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody yells at us and we feel, oh my gosh, what's that all about? I thought this person loved me. How can we get through that? And creativity often helps us manage and navigate through those life challenges in a very safe way. I mean, sure, prescription drugs might be the way for someone, and I support that if that's needed for people. But sometimes we can use just creative management to get through things, where we don't have to be heavily sedated, or we don't have to choose the common treatment. We look for alternative therapies to help us. And this is one of the safest, well documented therapies from drawing on cavemen walls and all these things. I mean, it's very well documented that it works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of going back to being courageous, we have to, if we're doing something creative, and in the workshops I teach, people want it to be perfect. Like I can't draw, I can't no. As always, even though I'm writing primarily, I use all the arts in the workshops. People are like, I can't draw. I go, of course you can. They go, no, 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 I can't. I go, you can do shapes and color on a page, right? Yeah. I said, that's art. And again, we go back to the kid. And when I work with people and they create something, I say to people, we're going to share this in the group, and do not begin with, oh, I'm not very good at drawing and da da. Remember little kids, when little kids create something, they come to me, they go, look what I did. So all of my classes, everyone knows to say, look what I did. They're
Yeah.
not allowed to say, oh, I'm not really like, no.
It's not about trying to make it look like something. It's just
Right.
about even closing your eyes and just doing it and feeling it and then going, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
The courage comes in letting go of what you think other people's expectations are.
Exactly.
I'm just doing mine. You can deal with it.
Yeah, and like you, I work with military, I work with suicide prevention, awareness, mental health, trauma, sexual assault. You don't have to have all that. I also work with people that are just having a funky time and overwhelmed with the state of the world right now. What would you advise someone sitting out there right now that doesn't have a paintbrush or a glob of clay or costumes to act it out? What can they do right now, just wherever they are?
So the tool I have in the book, which you can actually do even without all the materials, um, is place a value on yourself. And there's one way to do that. Imagine yourself as a piece of art. Imagine you are an amazing piece of art. Um, and that can look any way you want, right? It can be an interior, it can be whatever, but you are this incredible piece of art. And think about, if you're this valuable piece of art, where would you put yourself in your house or wherever you are, and be able to look at that sort of objectively, like, oh, I'm not all this other stuff that's happening around me. I'm this valuable, independent being that does not have to be connected to all the mayhem. I think sometimes just allowing ourselves to step back and say, I am not defined by the mayhem around me. I am
Mm,
this valuable piece of art.
beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you, all of you, for tuning in and listening to us today. And we look forward to having you join us on Courageous Creative Conquerors again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.